Hey everybody. So it's time for episode 9 of NHL Remember Him, and we have a player today that spent a good number of years in the NHL, quite a long time. Struggled with injuries for much of his career, which kind of hampered his offensive output and how good of a player he could have been. Also, certainly hampered his games played because despite being in the league from 2003 all the way till 2016, um, he only played 711 career games. So, this is a guy who played long, years wise, could have been a thousand games played player, but injuries certainly took their toll. But that player is Chris Higgins. Certainly somebody that I remember, watching growing up and watching for a number of years in the NHL. Higgins played 711 career NHL games regular season. He scored 165 goals, 168 assists for 333 points. In the playoffs, he played 62 career playoff games, scoring 11 goals and 10 assists for 21 points. So, he was in the league for a long time, but the games played are certainly not as high as they could have been. So, Higgins was drafted 14th overall in the first round in 2002 by the Montreal Canadiens. And he really burst onto the scene with the Canadiens. His career started in the 2003 season, but he only played 2 games his first season. And he played with Montreal all the way until 2009. Then in the 2009-2010 season, he split that between the New York Rangers and the Calgary Flames. He played the 2010-11 season with the Florida Panthers, and then during that year was sent to Vancouver and finished his career in Vancouver from 2011 until 2016. So, to be honest, I don't remember Chris Higgins playing for the Rangers, Flames, or Panthers. Like, I don't know why, but I remember him obviously in Montreal when he was watching him when I was a kid, Bruins Canadiens games, and he was a pretty good player for Montreal. And I certainly remember him in Vancouver, where he spent the last number of years for his career. I don't remember this middle part of his career at all with New York, Calgary, or Florida. I can't even picture him in those jerseys. I distinctly remember Montreal, and I distinctly remember Vancouver. He was on the 2011 Vancouver team that Boston played in the Stanley Cup final. He got traded to them during the year that year. So yeah, but Higgins is certainly a guy I remember. I also remember that he was an American-born player. He's from New York, but he seemed to always play on Canadian teams. He obviously spent a long time in Montreal, spent a long time in Vancouver, and made a stop in Calgary along the way. He played for a lot. He spent most of his career on Canadian teams, even though he was an American player. And I always thought that was kind of interesting. And just it's not something that you see all the time. So, as I said, he was drafted 14th overall in 2002 by the Canadiens, and he was a 3-time 20-goal scorer. Those were his first 3 seasons in the NHL. It's interesting with Higgins; he scored 20-plus goals his first 3 years with Montreal, his full seasons. And then it kind of, dropped off after that. Again, the injuries played a role in that, and the injuries started to pile up. But after his first couple of, for his first few seasons, the offense did start to drop off. He hit 50 points once, and that was, I believe, his third full season in Montreal. He hit 50 points, and then that was it. From that point on, he was always around the 30-ish point mark. Sometimes he could get to 40, but he wasn't a 20-goal scorer ever again after those first 3 seasons. And I believe his high after that was 18. And his goal totals always seemed to be in the teens somewhere. His point totals were around 30. I think if you average them out, they were somewhere in the 30s. Some years were better than others. And again, injuries played a big role in that. It seemed like Chris Higgins was one of those guys that was kind of, always battling something, always hurt. He never could get a full season in. Um, Honestly, I'd have to go back and check. I'm not even sure if he ever played a full 82 game season. I maybe early in his career, but I think, looking down towards, the later years, I don't think he ever played a full 82 game season. I think a lot of times his games played total were in the 70s, sometimes lower than that. Sometimes, he missed a lot of time with injury. But yeah, injuries certainly hampered his career, and I think that's a shame because he did have a lot of potential. He was drafted 14th overall. He was a first round pick. He showed when he came into the league that he could be a decent goal scorer. And I think when you score 20 plus goals each of your first 3 years, people think, the expectation is that you're going to be consistently a 20 to 25 goal scorer and that you do have 30 goal potential. But unfortunately, the way things went in his career, rather than ascending up, he had that great first few seasons, and then everything started to decline. And that's just unfortunate because he did show signs of potential of being a really good player. So Higgins ended up spending most of his career as like a third line type guy, very similar to Sean Bergenheim, who I did earlier in this series. I think a couple episodes ago I did Bergenheim. It ended up being very, very similar kinds of careers for both of them. It's just the way it turned out. But yeah, I certainly remember Higgins with Montreal and Vancouver. Don't remember that little journey in the middle of his career. I just don't remember him going to those places. But I don't think NHL.com is wrong. But I certainly remember him in Montreal and Vancouver, and that's where he spent a majority of his career, in those two teams. So Chris Higgins, certainly a guy that I remember. I'm sure a lot of you will as well, considering he played up until 2016. It's not like he was an older player, somebody who was playing in the mid-2000s that some of you might not remember. I think most of you will know Chris Higgins. So he had a pretty decent NHL career. Unfortunately, it was somewhat hampered by injuries, and he never could really break through into being that consistent 25 goal scorer that people thought he could early in his career. But he still put together a nice third liner type career, and a good secondary scoring guy to have on your team. So that is episode number 9. Chris Higgins. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Those links are all down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon page and merchandise store are in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.